What's up, YouTube? Good to see you guys. So, the car's in the air. I figured I would walk you guys around a little bit of what I've been doing. Let's get started. So, the first thing that I need to do with this car, one of the first things I need to do is figure out, I'm getting cam and crank signal errors in this car because I'm using the stock distributor to pick up the signal for the ECU to fire the spark plugs. Now, what I have to potentially remedy that, assuming it's not a software issue, is I have some grounding cable. Okay, so that's sheathing, and it's going to go around some of the cables that I think are picking up extra noise. It's very hard to insulate noise. You throw in the fact that you're running a magnetic pickup for a sensor instead of a Hall effect sensor, it makes everything more difficult. The rules that we use make it so that you can't use a cam trigger on your car. So I can't use a cam trigger, can't use a crank trigger, so it makes it a little bit more difficult. Anyway, the other thing that I've been working on is, so this car over here, this Civic, I measured bump steer, and the bump steer on this side toes out under compression, and it toes in under compression on the other side, which basically means that the car is trying to turn right when I'm braking straight, which means that I'm turning to the left, which if you look at some of my videos, it makes sense. That's what I've been doing. I think it was like that before I got in an accident with Lee. So I'm going to have to fix that. So in order to fix that, I am going to have to compare rear suspension components to a stock car or a car that hasn't had its rear messed up. Enter the parts car. So, parts car is not a priority. Bodywork, not necessarily priority. I just need the car to run, damn it. I missed Watkins Glen, and I'm upset about that. And I'm really determined to make the next event, no matter what. I'm determined. Kind of makes me sad. But the idea is, okay, I don't need to get this bodywork done, but if I can get this quarter panel cut off the car, aka that thing, I can get the car up in the air and I can start removing suspension so I can start measuring the body and the rear of that, okay, the parts car, and comparing it to that. So that's what I did. So basically, if you enter the parts car, I cut off the quarter panel. And I learned a lot in the process, which I think will make putting that quarter panel on that car a lot easier. So this quarter panel is in decent shape. This rear here has a little bit of Bondo. This here is really clean. I bent it a little bit, pulling it off the car. So it's not perfect by any means, but it is going to be okay for a race car, I think. It'll look much better than whatever the heck is on my car right now. And my idea for this quarter panel is, instead of drilling out all the spot welds up here and taking all this time at the roof, what I'm going to do is probably just cut here, and then I'm just going to weld the quarter panel in. I got spot weld bits, finally. I got them from Amazon. The idea was, if I'm going to be doing the bodywork myself, I want to make sure it goes well on that car, and I'm not really so much worried about this car. This car, I just wanted to make sure that this didn't get damaged, but I mean, I cut up the roof, I bent the back part. I don't really care. This car is going to go to the scrap yard, so I'm not really too worried about it. I was more worried about that car over there right now. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to weld up this header. This is a high-tech replica. I'm going to weld that up because I got the slip joints together. Unfortunately, it was after the dyno, but Tony came over. He helped me get it together. So I'm going to weld that up and then send it to Dylan for ceramic coating. And then we'll be good to start dropping the suspension from that. So, yep. All right, guys. So I didn't quite get to work on the car just yet, but I cleaned up. There was a bunch of glass and Bondo and metal shavings under here from pulling the quarter panel off, so I cleaned those up. And then you'll notice that there's tarps inside the car. It's because they were previously on my compressor that I have yet to hook up. But I also put the compressor on dollies, so that way I can move the compressor around my garage. That's just a temporary solution. I'm going to get caster wheels for it long term. It's a very heavy compressor. It is an industrial size compressor. I will likely be using this for air tools and to paint the car at some point, maybe in the off season. But yeah, I got this for free. So thank you, Jason. My friend Jay gave it to me. He runs a diesel business, JR's Diagnostics. Shout out to Jay. So I guess my plan with this is to remove the brake calipers and then, let them dangle or whatever, and then drop the trailing arms and see what the suspension geometry looks like. But first, I got to jack this car up a little higher in the air. because it is a little bit too low for me. You'll notice that this is all the way up in the air, and this is only partially up in the air, so I'm going to use this big jack that I have, which is what I use to jack this up, and then I'm going to jack the Civic up, and we'll be able to get better clearance under there and get under it. Okay, we have the rear lower trailing arms off. This one is from the car. Okay, has the PCI rear lower trailing arm ball joint, and this is cut out. This is originally rubber from the factory. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up some reference points here, and I'm going to measure to the ground because these are both laying flat. So these are both laying flat. Okay, I took everything off so that they're equal, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure to see if they're bent. I'm imagining and I'm hoping to at least explain why my is doing that. This one is bent in from an accident because this one was on the car for a long time after I hit a wall, after I made contact with Lee. So this one I'm hoping is not bent, and I can measure it, and there's a difference that explains why it's behaving the way it's behaving. All right, so the first thing that I'm noticing is that if I can somehow get this phone to stand up, I can show you. So basically what I'm doing is I'm measuring from the ground. Can you see that? Yeah, you can. From the ground to the lowest point at the front of the control arm. This one is the one that came off the car. I'm getting 5.5. Okay? You see that? This one is the one that came off. This is the parts car one. And this is, I'm getting less than 5.5. I'm getting 5 and 5/16. So this one is sitting lower to the ground than this one. I'm going to double check. I'm going to move them around, and I'm going to measure them in different spots on the floor just to make sure it's not the floor that's causing inconsistencies. I'm going to make sure there's nothing behind it. But so far, it's looking like this one that came off the car is bent, which is what I expected. It's bent like this. Okay, so results. So I double checked the back. There was a dust shield that was on the back of the other one, but I still got the measurements, so one was shorter than the other. But then I switched positions on the floor, and then they were equal. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to test them in the same exact spot. So you can see I marked this, and then I did some crappy marking back here. But that's going to allow me to get it roughly in the same spot for both. That way I can see if one is bent or not. Okay, so looking at them from here up, they look the same. This one was on the car. It's hard to see. That's the one that was off the car. That's the one that was on the car. They look, maybe it's just the angle, but it looks like this one is bent a little bit, and this one was on the car. Now, so what I did was I measured the angle to see if it was bent here, and it appears that there's no bending that happened here, which I guess would make sense. There's a lot of structural rigidity here. If any bending might happen, I would imagine it would happen here. Now, I measured these two multiple times, and every single time this one had a lower drop to the flat surface than this one did. I tried different surfaces, I tried different orientations, and every single time, you know, it either came out to be 5.5 versus 5 3/8 or 5.5 versus 5 5/16. What that tells me is it's probably bent. This is probably bent right here for the car. I'm not quite sure that I want to pull the trigger on a diagnosis yet, though, because I want to check the angle of this brake. These are both sitting flat, so these should give the same angles when I read it with the phone, because I'm going to use my phone as an angle finder. When I read it perpendicular like that to the plane of the trailing arm. And if it doesn't come out the same, then maybe something is bent back here. But I think that this is bent up here. And then I'm going to pull the one off that car just to make sure, because I want to make sure that I'm not crazy and that these numbers are actually as tight as they should be. Okay, and then, so this is the passenger side. That one gave me 5 inches from the ground to this. So I'm going to measure, but now I'm confused. So that's 5 inches, so we're going to keep going. All right, good news. I don't think I need to change a trailing arm. Bad news. I don't know why the suspension geometry is doing. Okay, so this is 5.5 both ways, measured that way and this way. And and the one that came off the car is 5.5. This one's the odd one out, actually, and it's slightly lower, so maybe this one's actually bent somehow. I'm kind of at a loss for words. I don't really know what to do. If you have any ideas, drop them in the comments. I am going to pull the rest of the suspension off, and then I'll get back to the car tomorrow. So, yeah.